We can't, I think, return to any glorious period in the past, whether it's Ireland or the United Kingdom, and sort of hope that the world hasn't moved on, because it has, and our trade links are essential to protect. Nowhere, I think, more so than in, well, certainly as much, if not more, in agriculture than any other sector. I represent a farming constituency. I'm a farmer myself. I expect that there will be a precipitous drop in the price of cattle in a couple of weeks' time if there isn't a trade deal. There'll be a precipitous price in the drop of milk in a couple of weeks' time if there isn't a deal. And while I suppose I would be among those, and I'm sure you'll have your own backbenchers, Minister, who will be calling on the government to compensate. I mean, nothing can compensate for being able to trade. I think the same is true with regard to COVID, but that's another issue. But I do wish to make the point that, you know, many people say that this has been a failure of British politics, and perhaps it has, but it also marks, I think, a profound failure on the part of the European Union itself, and that people feel marginalised from decision-making, and people feel that the decision-making and the decisions made don't represent them. And I think there's certainly that strand of disaffectedness is in every country across the European Union, including our own, and is one that I think needs to be addressed. And it's very important that we do address it, because there's a certain smugness that I think can set in in any debate, whether it's on this ongoing debate on COVID-19, or whether it's with regard to the success or failures of the European Union, or there's a political, there's, I suppose, there's an elite in every country in the European Union who have benefited largely from being members of the European Union. And I would have to say, honestly, I've benefited enormously from being a member of the European Union. I've lived in a country that's benefited enormously from that. Having a European Union passport is of so much more value than having an Irish passport, because it is an Irish passport and more. You know, European Union citizenship doesn't replace national citizenship. It's on top of national citizenship. It's an add-on. But sometimes I think it's an add-on that's neglected. I mean, we didn't have, I wasn't in the last Dáil, but apparently it was quite dominated by the issue of Brexit, and how important the European Union was, and how important our trade relationships were with the European Union, and indeed our trade relationships with Britain. But in the duration of this Dáil, I have to say, I've heard almost nothing about, and Minister, I appreciate you came back from a European Council meeting, you made statements, you addressed us, and I thank you for that. But in the general political discourse in Ireland, I've really heard very little about the European Union and the four freedoms which are fundamental to it. And, you know, other countries have dealt with the undoubted risks and dangers that affect us. And it is for each member state to protect its population and to protect public health in it. But it's equally for each member state to do so in a way that protects the four freedoms. And I haven't seen that feature in the discourse. I appreciate the traffic light system has been introduced very late in the day, but there was no discussion of that when travel was effectively banned during summer. There was no method. Yes, if there is a risk in travel, and there's a debate among experts the extent to which there is a risk. I mean, if you go to another country and behave irresponsibly, well, obviously there's a risk that you're going to get COVID-19, just as if you behave irresponsibly in Ireland. But the act of travel in and of itself may not be the risk. But there was no effort made at all to protect that fundamental freedom. There's no acknowledgement in what we're hearing now, in the debate we're having now, that there are thousands of families living in Dublin and right across Ireland who are not originally from Ireland, who don't have an Irish passport, but are availing of the free movement. And I think that needs to come to the fore more, because we can talk about it in the abstract, but there are concrete realities, and the most concrete of the realities is the four freedoms that needed to be protected and that continue to need to be protected. So I'd urge the government to do that when we move beyond this phase of successfully negotiating a trade deal with the European Union, or not, and I certainly hope and wish you the best of luck that it will be the former.